Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a bit of an overview of who you are?
I'm Caitlin Sargent Jones. So I'm a Australian track and field Olympian. I competed in the Rio Olympics in the 4x400 meter relay, where we were finalists, came seventh. Also, two-time Commonwealth Games representative, two-time national champion over the 400 meters. And very recently retired and now living my stepping more into my role as a physiotherapist, but very much still staying connected with the track and field world.
Yeah, that's awesome. So many accolades there that I can't wait to delve into. But we'll start first with, how did you sort of get into athletics? What sort of drew you into that, and why did you stay around so long?
Yeah, well, it's really funny. Like when I made the Olympic team, they're like, "Oh, let us know which little athletics club you went to." And I actually never did little athletics. So I have an older brother, and so I started life out in Auskick, and then I played AFL until about under 10s. And that was kind of when combination of we started doing proper athletics at school, and also when it went from being like just a bit of bump to like proper tackling in the football. And this is kind of pre-AFLW, so I was in an entire boys team. So I think probably those two things together is what drew me away from AFL and towards track and field at that time. And literally it was just, we had school carnival, and I just really enjoyed running fast. And I guess I was naturally somewhat talented at it. And so when one of the school PE teacher suggested that I go along and do some after school programs in it, kind of jumped at that opportunity, and really just, I would have been, probably 10 at the time. And that pretty much kickstarted like a nearly 2 decades of track and field.
Yeah, which is amazing. Such a long time in the sport. And I guess, there's so many questions that I want to ask. When did you sort of realize that, hey, like this is something I'm really passionate about and I think I can really take this, quite seriously? It can be a career, Olympics, Com Games. When did that sort of click for you?
I'm not sure. I'm certainly not, like, it would be lovely to sit here and say, oh, like, I know there are certainly people that I competed against that kind of went to Sydney Olympics and was like, that's what I want to do, and like kind of chase that dream, but that isn't really my story. I think I just, like, each step along the way, it was like in school, it was like, oh, I really want to make like state championships. And that was like this big tick off the list to like make it to state champs. And then once I did that, it was like, oh, well, now I want to make it to national championships. And so like, I just enjoyed kind of ticking off those little goals and working along the way. And probably, I guess, when I was in grade 8, so kind of like start of high school, is when I like made national championships for the first time, and for age group, and won a couple of medals. And so I think that probably like spurred me along. But I think probably what really, I always talk about, like a really key standout moment for me was going to World Junior Championships. So we were over in Canada in the under 20 team. And I walked out of the stadium into the stadium for my first event, and I really clearly heard one of my teammates like cheer my name, and just like had a great run, like pretty much ran a PB in like my first international race wearing the Australian uniform. And like that still kind of gives me goosebumps talking about that now. So I think like the whole event was just like, it was like a great team and a great experience. And I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is awesome. As much of this as I can have for as long as I can do it. Just like, yeah, I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah, which is amazing. And you sort of touched on there that, it wasn't sort of like this big thing, like as a kid, like, oh, I want to be like that when I grow up. And whilst there's a lot of people that do that, there's a lot of people that don't either. And I think sometimes we sort of forget that sometimes you kind of just get caught up and it's like, oh, like, how did I get here? Like, this is pretty cool. Like, let's just keep going. And you also said like those small goals, like, oh yeah, like let's do states and then sort of progress further. Do you think you've been able to apply that sort of small goals, small wins in every sort of aspect in sport and outside of sport?
Yeah, I think like, say you want to make an Olympic team, like that's a 4 years, or in this instance, a 5-year cycle. Like that's a long time. I heard, I think it was Ellie Cole said, like, someone was going, oh, you're going to stick around for another, it's only 3 years away. She goes, that's more than 1,000 training sessions away. Like, so when you put it in that context, you're like, that's a lot of, you know, early mornings, early to bed, you know, hard sessions, putting yourself in the hurt locker. Like, so I don't think you can have just that as the goal. Like, you absolutely have to have these little boxes along the way, because otherwise it's so easy to get disheartened. Like, you know, as athletes, we have good days, we have bad days, we have good seasons and bad seasons and injuries and setbacks and all this sort of stuff. So if you've just got one goal and nothing between there and 4 years time, like, you're just going to lose your mind really, and lose your focus and lose your motivation. So yeah, I think it's been really important to see those small wins along the way. And I think, not just in track and field, but in all areas of life, like, you know, it's very, very easy to be like, all right, this is where I want to be in 5 years time, but like, how do I actually make that happen? And how do I not get overwhelmed by the task at hand? And like breaking it down and making sure that you do also take the time to celebrate those wins. So it's not just like a tick box of like, I have to do that to get there. It's like, no, I worked really hard and I made that happen. Like, let's take a moment to be like, awesome, good job. Like, yes, we want more on to the next thing, but like, don't lose sight of the fact that you've already like achieved something that you set your mind to and worked hard for.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing to remember, because it's so easy to do. Like, look at the big picture and it's like, holy shit, like, I'm so far away from that. I have so far to go. But you have to take a step back and like, yeah, but look how far I've come to even get to this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're having like an off day, off training session or whatever that is, how do you sort of bounce back from that or shift that mindset?
I think like in the moment, I just try to talk to myself and say, like, I think, you know, especially as you kind of come along and you mature as an athlete, like, you know that every day you can't do a PB every day. Like, that's just not physiologically possible. That is not going to happen. And just going, okay, like, just recognizing it for what it is. You're like, you know what, today's just not my day. Like, I'm not on today. All I can do is give 100% of whatever I have for today. So if I compare my times, if I look, and I mean, track and field is so objective. So like, I know what I did this session in last time I did it, and it's not the times that I'm running today. It's like the stopwatch doesn't lie. And I go, that's fine. Like, it is what it is. Those times, like, we're just going to put in the best effort that we can. Like, focus on all the right things, like focus on your technique, focus on your rhythm, whatever you're supposed to be thinking about at different sections of that rep. Do all the right things, put in the effort. And today's just one of the days where the stopwatch doesn't really matter. Like, it's hard, but try to not pay too much attention to that for today. And, you know, go to bed, turn up, do it all again tomorrow, and maybe tomorrow will be a better day.
Yeah. And I come from a swimming background, so I understand the total objective. It's just you and the stopwatch, 100%. And it's really hard not to get caught up in that, because it's like, I was doing these times yesterday. Like, why is it not happening today? Like, this is so infuriating. And it's like, yes, but you know, your starts are really good, or your turns are really good, or, you know, for you, you might be hitting the skills exactly the way you want, but it's just the times that are not following through. So as you said, like, you do have to be like, okay, I've done everything I can today. Tomorrow's a new day and we can start fresh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely not trying to, like, obviously not as athletes, we can't let ourselves off the hook and just be like, oh, it's not my day, so like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, still giving that best effort, but then also certainly trying to like draw a line under that and be like, cool, you're not happy with that session, that's okay. You're allowed to be disappointed with it. You're allowed to feel whatever you want to feel about it, but like, done. We're moving on now. We're not going to sit and dwell on that and talk rubbish about ourselves because it was one bad session, and let's look at a whole month of training or a whole 3 months of training. Like, that one session doesn't define your whole progress.
100% agree. What would you say then has been one of your biggest setbacks that you've had to overcome?
I think, like, as athletes, there's usually injuries, like, and yeah, certainly, like, I mean, last year for everyone was a bit of a roller coaster. So, and, you know, in the grand scheme of things, being a track athlete, like, we had it pretty good, because at the end of the day, you can run literally anywhere. So we didn't need a pool, we didn't need a tennis court, or, you know, like, whatever else. So, you know, certainly by no means the worst case scenario, but for my body personally, like, going from running on a proper synthetic track 3 days a week to then doing all my training on grass, which my body was just not used to, kind of like set off some niggles. And then like body was like kind of adjusting just in time for everything to open back up and go back onto a synthetic track. And so I tried to be, you know, obviously physio background, tried to be smart about balancing that transition, but just didn't quite get it right. And yeah, so just like hamstring and Achilles like tendon issues. So I had probably about 6 weeks where I actually just couldn't run, which is like the longest time in a very, very long time to be on the bike and in the pool. And it was like in July, like it was cold. I didn't want to be in the water. Like that's not me. So I was like, find a heated pool. That's top priority. Yeah. And then obviously like if you had 6 weeks of not running, it's not like bang straight back into normal training. It's a gradual progression back into volume and intensity. So it was probably like a good 3 or 4 months of like and that frustration, I guess, of feeling like you were limited by injury more than fitness. And then obviously the flip side of that, like when your body's then feeling good, you now lost all this training time, so now your fitness is really limited. So yeah, probably like kind of June through December of last year was quite challenging, like just trying to manage through those injuries and, you know, still in the middle of a global pandemic and not knowing what was going to be happening with competition schedules and all that sort of stuff, as well as kind of like background noise, and just like, yeah, trying to stay focused on doing the rehab and just taking it like, you know, one thing at a time and not getting too preoccupied with, you know, what's going to happen in 1 month, 2 months, 3 months time. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to delve into injuries more based on my own personal situation at the moment. Like a couple of people know that I broke my back and had surgery, and I'm about 3 months post as we are recording this. And, you know, being in Melbourne, still in lockdown, so that progression back to sport is obviously on hold, kind of in a good way and a bad way. Like it's frustrating. I'm like, you know, I'm starting to feel better now. Like I'm itching to get back, but at the same time, it's probably the best thing for my body, allowing it to recover. How do you sort of battle mentally with it? Because it can be really challenging. Like, you know, mentally you still like, my body can do this, but physically it's just not able to do that yet. How do you sort of talk yourself through that and manage it?
Yeah, I think like being a physio and an athlete is a blessing and a curse. Because I think as athletes, we're very not rational people.
No.
Often it's like, we want what we want and like whatever it takes, we're going to do it. And so whereas like physio is very logical, like these are the progressions, this is like this equals this, and this is the process. So sometimes there's a bit of an internal struggle. And like, I know even say like I was doing like trying to come up with other ways of doing like cross training stuff at one point, and I was doing boxing, and like it was great, I was getting a good workout, but I was also like, I'm not as strong in my upper body as my lower body. It would be like box for a minute and then do push-ups and then box some more. And I was just like, my physio brain is like, your technique is awful, you're going to hurt yourself. And I'm like, athlete brain is like, just do it, hard effort, like go. And I was like, oh, look at that, you did hurt yourself. So I was like, physio brain Caitlin is going to ban you from going to boxing because athlete brain Caitlin can't behave herself. So I think like having that little, internal battle sometimes of like the physio brain definitely knows best, but the athlete brain is probably more stubborn, is a challenge. But on the same side, it means that when I'm not in the heat of the moment, I've got, all the knowledge and understanding and really, really understand why, even if it feels like I can do this amount of volume, why I'm keeping it back to this. And it's that thing of like, I know that is the best thing for me. And I think it's just that reframe of like, almost taking that step out. So like we were talking about before, like if you at that big picture, like coming down to the small goals, almost like flipping that. And it's like, okay, your goal is to be fit and healthy for national championships in April. You're not going to do that if you don't follow this process now. So it's like, calm down, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll get there by then. But not if you rush it, and not if you cut corners and, do stuff just because you want to, not even if it's not what you're supposed to be doing. So I think it's just that, just trying to reframe it in like, what's the goal? What's the outcome? What's the desired outcome here? And how do we make that happen, even if it's unpleasant right in the current moment.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, I don't have a physio background, but I have a sports science background. So, I have like a bit of an understanding too. And I think being an athlete, being stubborn, as you said, is a blessing and a curse, because it means that you will get things done. But at the same time, it's like there is no line on where to stop. Like it just doesn't exist. Like you'll just keep going and going and going. And I'm definitely sort of finding that now. I'm like, but my body could do this before. Like I'm going to push and so it can do it again. And it's like, well, Renee, that's probably not the best idea. Like you did have surgery. Maybe just take a step back for a second because otherwise I won't be able to get back in the pool when I want to.
Yeah.
So it can be quite challenging, but yeah, as you said, like you do have to sort of, as you said, like, you go from big picture to small picture and working on those goals. Like if I want to achieve this, as you said, you have to follow that process.
Yeah. And I think I think sometimes having the physio background makes me almost like sometimes like a bit harsh on myself. Like, how did I let this happen? Like, how did I get injured? Like, that's so ridiculous. I can't believe I did that. Like end of 2019, it was like my back had been a bit stiff and tight. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like ran state relay championships, like first run of the day. Like I was meant to be in all these different teams for my club. First run of the day, like tore my hamstring. And I was like, yeah, well, your back was tight. Like what, how did you think that was going to end well? Like,
yeah.
So I'm like, well, that's embarrassing as a physio that you did that. Like obviously frustrating as an athlete, but as a physio, I'm also more just embarrassed. But I think like, it's that similar to like, I think, people talk about like, you should talk about yourself like you would talk to your best friend. It's the same thing of like, well, talk to yourself as you would talk to one of your clients. Like you wouldn't tell your client they're an idiot for tearing their hamstring. Like that's not helping anybody. You're like, okay, that's happened. It's done. Like, how are we going to rehab this? How do we get you better and get you back to where you want to be?
Yeah, exactly right. And I love that because we should talk to ourselves like that, but we're our own worst critic. We're always so hard on ourselves. And I think that's just because we just want more. Like we just want the best for ourselves. And so for whatever reason, we think being harsh and focusing on the negatives so we can fix it so that we can be better. Are you still there? Oh, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I just froze a bit.
Oh, that's okay.
I missed most of what you said, sorry.
That's fine. We'll just jump to the next question. I can just edit that bit out, so that's no stress.
Cool.
What was the lead in like to Rio Olympics? What was that like?
Like the most exhausting experience of my life. I think for us, so for the way, like obviously every sport's different. So for track and field, with the relay teams, they take just the top 16 teams in the world. But they like, if you competed at World Relay Championships the year before and you were in the top 8 there, that was like you secured your spot, and then they'd fill the next best 8 spots after that. So we were kind of like at that stage, we were like, that's probably our best opportunity because like it's us coming off our national championships, but the rest of the world hasn't really kickstarted their season yet, because athletics is like a summer sport. So we do it in our summer, and then like the rest of the world does it in their summer, which is like June, July kind of thing. So we went to the Bahamas, which is like an excellent place to have a global championship. Hang out on the beach all day and then go and race at night. We managed to come top 8 there, and so kind of like secured our spot. So from May of 2015, we pretty much knew like there was a 4x4 team going at the very least. And so then it was kind of like obviously fighting for ideally individual spots and then fighting for relay spots as well. So I like chose to sit out the world championships later in the year of 2015 to stay home and train. Because I just knew I'd had like years of back to back, like going over in the middle of the year and just missing out on like a really good solid winter base. And I was like, okay, this is like that step back of like, that's the goal. Like in another 18 months from now, like this is a sacrifice we have to make that happen. So stayed home, kind of like got a really good base in, and then went into like domestic season. So I placed 4th at national championships. And obviously so I like missed out on the individual by maybe about like half a second. I'm trying to think of an individual spot, but was placed 4th, like definitely ranked 4th in like head-to-heads and times for the season. but I guess it's just that like anxiety of like, I haven't secured the spot. And the track and field team we didn't get named. Like the whole team doesn't get named until like, it was just like 2 weeks before we were on the plane. So it was like finished up nationals in April, and then a couple of months, like another month or 6 weeks or so of training, and then back into a little bit of racing to like prove current fitness. So it's just like every time you're going out, it was like going out to prove that you should be in that team. So I think that was not an enjoyable experience in that context, because like I think the best races are when you're going out with the plan of like, this is what I want to execute, kind of like I know if I do all these things correctly, the outcome will take care of itself. Whereas if you're going out with the focus on, I have to beat that person and I have to prove that I'm fit, and otherwise I'm not going to be on the team. And the focus is really on the outcome, it can kind of take all the joy out of it.
Yep.
So I think that's why it was like a very stressful, tiring process. But that being said, like obviously getting the email, actually it wasn't a phone call, it was an email. I knew that day like the team was getting named, and I'm like checking my phone, I was like, no one's calling me, like, and then I was like just checking my email like on my work lunch, I was like, oh okay, it's an email, right, okay. I think I probably just like burst into tears at the time. So like obviously in the end, like the outcome made that all worthwhile, but certainly it wasn't the most enjoyable process, and partially I think because of my headspace around it, like the work I did with Sportslite going into like the Commonwealth Games qualifying process for 2018 really like flipped my perspective and made that a much better process. But going into Rio, I think I was so outcomes focused and like so had such a tight grip on, this is what, like, I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't make this team. The qualifying process was like, I think exhausting is probably the right word. Like I pretty much got to Rio and was like, I don't think I can do that again. That like took every inch of my soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the actual experience like once you were there? Like, was it an enjoyable experience? Like, obviously, because it was a very tiring lead in. Were you still able to enjoy the experience though?
Yeah, I think like once I was there, you're just like a kid in a candy shop. Like, you know, as you can imagine, it's like I was in like essentially in the relay team in the lead up to 2012, but the team itself, we didn't qualify. And so it was kind of like got close but missed that. So like to finally get there in 2016 and also like we were lining up knowing that we had a really good team. Like we had kind of not like scraped in, but we'd kind of gone this roundabout way to get into the Olympics. Of the times on the board, like we were ranked 15th or 16th or something, but we were like, no, we can make the final. Like we've got girls that are all in really good shape. We're all like in peak of our life. And we had a really good team, like within our 4x4 crew, like a really good team atmosphere and like culture. And it was just like, and then obviously just, to be in the village and all that comes with that was just like, so exciting. And just to wake up and get to do that every day was fantastic.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that feeling would be like. What was that shift for you then? Like, as you said, you sort of spoke to a sports psych leading into the 2018 Com Games to really shift that perspective. What was it that shifted, and how did you get to the point where you thought that, okay, I need to see a sports psych about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did actually just start working with Jonah like in the lead up to Rio, but we kind of like, we're just like doing a little bits and pieces around, and we didn't like get to do much deep diving for a little bit. And I think it was around like going into Rio, I think because I had this tight grasp on this is what has to happen. And it's like, ugh. So I certainly wasn't like, my fitness in training wasn't necessarily matching the times I was putting on the board in a race. So I kind of think anytime you've got that mismatch between your perceived fitness and like I said, in track and field, it's relatively objective, and then kind of like your execution on race day, there's a pretty good idea that there's probably something going on between your ears that's getting in your own way, which was kind of what prompted me to start that work. And then I think it was around like really leaning into the idea of racing and I mean sport in general as just a avenue for really living in my values, in my value set, and using that as an opportunity to grow. And like that itself is the journey. The journey is the reward in itself. And it's like, this is nice sprinkles on the cupcake at the end. If you make the team, like amazing. But if you don't, if you did absolutely everything you could along the way and you did it in a way that you're proud of yourself, then like you can't, like you're allowed to be disappointed, absolutely. And you will feel gutted and you might not get out of bed for 2 days and you might cry, whatever, that's fine. But you will be able to sleep at night and you will be at peace with yourself if you've done all of this along the way correctly, in a way that aligns with your values, and in a way that makes you proud of yourself, and that, you know, you are still the same person when you wake up in the morning, whether you have that uniform or not. And yeah, you might miss out on a cool experience, but you're still the same person, and you've still done, whether you make the team or not, you've still done all the work to get there.
Yeah, which I think is a really hard concept to grasp. And I think, I mean, I definitely don't think I've got there yet. I think I'm still sort of working through not basing my worth and value on my performance, because it's very easy to get caught up in it. And obviously takes a lot of time. And I think lockdown and COVID has sort of helped me sort of think about it a little bit more. And whilst I'm more aware of it, I'm definitely not on the other side just yet. It's still there. How did you think you performed then? What was your sort of headspace in at the Com Games compared to Rio? Could you really notice the difference? Did you feel better mentally than going in?
Yeah, I think it was more like, I think, like I said, I had an amazing time in Rio, and like our relay team, we all performed really well. Like we placed well, like we came 7th, and as I said, we went in ranked like 15th. So we all ran really well, had a fantastic time. And similar at Gold Coast, it was probably more almost like how I was feeling in that period of time between going through the qualifying process. So, and then sitting around waiting for the team to be announced. So in Rio, it was like, I guess that, yeah, just holding on to something so tightly, you've just about squeezed the life out of it, versus going into Gold Coast. Like I knew I would be upset if I didn't get there, but I was also like, I know that I will still be content, and I will still be like, I might not be happy immediately, but I will be happy eventually. And knowing that I would be at peace if I didn't make the team.
Yeah, which is really good. Do you think then, how do you sort of handle expectations? And do you think that sort of pressure is mainly from within, or do you think there's sort of external things that impacted you when you were competing?
I think the internal pressure is definitely, I think for most athletes, that's the main devil. Like you said, we're generally speaking, you know, we're super motivated people, and we're our own harshest critics. So, and we're the ones that place expectations on ourselves. Like, yes, you might occasionally have like a head coach or someone that expects XYZ performance from you, but I think usually we're the ones putting the expectations on ourselves. So, and that's like not necessarily a bad thing, because if we had no expectations, like how do you drag yourself out of bed to training in the morning? You're not going to do that, because you're like, well, it doesn't matter how I perform. So you need some expectations, right? And I think it's just the balance of like knowing that, yes, this is the goal and this is all the work I'm going to put in to get there. And if I do all the work and I leave no stone unturned, and I am absolutely meticulous in my preparation, and I don't quite nail that, like, that's okay. Yes, it's going to suck and you're going to be disappointed, but you've done all the same work. Like you're a better person, you're a better athlete for having done all of that. And so missing out on that, the final outcome isn't the be all and end all. Like, look at all of the stuff that you've done along the way to get there, and, you know, the cool person that you've become by going through that process. And that's not to say that that it's necessarily an easy thing to do. Just be like, and it's not necessarily comfortable. Like, I've absolutely thought all of those things and still sat and cried my eyes out after a race. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But like I can then get up in the morning the next day when I've slept on it, had a moment, maybe depending on the, you know, the importance of the meet, maybe a couple of days. And then you can kind of reflect back and be like, yeah, it hurts. It hurts because I care about it and it was important to me, but I wouldn't have done anything differently. So like, I just wasn't as good as I wanted to be. And like, again, that sucks and that hurts to sit with that and process that. But I'm still the same person I was yesterday when I, you know, whether I achieved that or not.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you've recently retired. How did you sort of come to that decision? Was it like a lengthy process? I can imagine it would be trying to make that decision because you spend so many hours and so much time and dedication into this one thing to say, you know, I'm ready to walk away. How did you sort of make that decision and what's that transition been like?
Yeah, it's obviously a multifaceted thing. I think for me, there was a few things. Like one, as I got older, definitely just found it harder for my body to keep up, like definitely more kind of like injuries and niggles and having to spend, you know, more and more time doing the recovery and rehab and all this sort of stuff, and like spending literally half my life trying to sleep to get enough recovery. And my husband's like, can't we watch? I'm like, no, I need to go to bed. It's 9 o'clock, it's bedtime. I need 11 hours of sleep. And then I think alongside that, like, because I've had a dual career and had physio, and I've, you know, like I'm married and I've got all these other things in my life as well, and that's always been great. And just got to a point though where I felt like track was almost pulling me away from those things, whereas before that was never an issue. Like track was, you know, kind of like a shared number one priority. And now it's like, oh, I have to go to training, or like I have to do this, or I have to, and they're like, no, these are all things you're choosing to do. If you don't want to do them, don't do them. Like, so, and even things like, you know, obviously like during season, we would just never drink. And I'd be like, oh, I'd really like to have a glass of wine with dinner. Like, oh, I guess I shouldn't. Whereas like a year or two ago, like that just wasn't even, that did not even enter my brain. So I think just that little, like, and there's small things, but it just felt a bit like, yeah, I felt like I was missing out on things and I was giving up things to follow that, to be an elite athlete. And I just can't be in that headspace. Like, it just doesn't work. And I think that just says to me that, as much as I love track and field and I will always be involved in the sport, the absolute passion required to wholeheartedly throw your entire life into it was just not there anymore. And I just wanted to spend that, you know, time and energy doing, you know, in other areas of my life. Like I said, I've got, you know, I'm really passionate about being a physio, and I'm, you know, I'm an auntie, and I want to spend time with my little nephew, like all these different things in my life that make up who I am. I just want to spend, you know, like I said, I've been an athlete for 17 years or whatever. So I just felt like it was time to maybe spend some of that time and energy on other things.
Yeah. And do you think that having those other things, like we sort of touched on how we sort of get caught up of our worth being tied into our performance in our sport, do you think having your identity outside of being an athlete made that transition easier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just straight off the bat, like having some structure and routine to go to, like I get up and go to work Monday to Friday. Like if you don't have another job lined up and you're used to, I get up, I go to training, I come back, I nap, and then I go to training, and you suddenly have no structure whatsoever, I think that would be very challenging. And like I said as well, like in terms of just your perception of yourself and your identity, like I certainly still feel like I've lost a little part of me, and there's almost like this little grieving process attached to that of like, and that it's not that part of you goes away, like it's still there, but it feels like, you know, I'm losing some of those friends and relationships, like, and they're there, like if I go out to the track I can still chat to my training squad, but certainly like I'm obviously not going to be as close as when I'm seeing them every single day. So there's those little bits of losses, and you know, it's for the purpose of opening up a whole bunch of other opportunities, but you know, it does certainly feel like a little bit of a grieving process for all these things that you're losing, and part of that is a little bit of a sense of identity. So yeah, being able to just kind of then step into a bit more like filling out your sense of self of physio, wife, daughter, auntie, like all these other areas, I think makes a really big difference. And they're not just things that I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just do that now. They're all things that I'm as equally as passionate about as I was passionate about being an athlete. So I can, yeah, wholeheartedly kind of throw myself into those things and, use all the skill sets that I learned as an athlete to do those things now as well.
Yeah, which is super important. I think sometimes we get so focused on our sport because we want to do well. And obviously that requires a lot of time to do well, but you still have to have those other avenues whilst you're still in a sport so that when the time does come, whether it's by choice and sometimes it's not by choice, if it's an end of a contract or injury or whatever it is that you have to step away, you do have those other passions in your life that you can go to, that you're not completely just left wondering, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah, and I think even like during my career, like, times when I wasn't running well or I was having, a rough time or whatever, I think it made it easier to not attach my self-worth to my performance, knowing that that was just a part of who I was. That wasn't my entire identity. It's like, all right, well, I can get up and go to work and I can help a bunch of people today feel better and move better and live a better quality of life as a physio. So even if I ran slow on the weekend, doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Like, I've still got all these, other cool things that I can do. And I think along the lines of what you're saying, like, I think being able to make the choice to retire as well is really helpful. And I'm really grateful that I was in that position. It wasn't like, yeah, you've, ruptured your Achilles and it's, likely that you'll probably never sprint properly ever again, or, whatever it might be. It was very much a conscious choice of, this is the right timing for me in my life, and I'm making this decision for me. It's not being made, on my behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. Reflecting on your career, what would you say has been your greatest achievement in that whole time? I mean, there's a lot to reflect on, but is there a way that you can pick even just one great achievement out of that?
I think I probably have to say Olympic finalist as a career highlight for sure. And especially like because we ran in the first heat, and we didn't get an automatic qualifying spot, so we were standing around waiting to watch the second heat run and see if we'd like sneak in as a non-automatic, and so like got that whole the drama of the process. And like the 4x4 relay was like usually like the second last day on the program, like we've been sitting around in the village for like the whole time. And again, like track and field can be a really lonely sport as well, so it was really, really special to get to share that with the other girls as well, and to get to jump up and down and hug each other in that moment, knowing that we made it through, and that we'd all really like put in the work. And I think, we all basically ran lifetime bests in that race. And I think we did that for ourselves, but also for one another. So I think just the whole atmosphere around the experience was incredible. And I would definitely call that a career highlight.
Absolutely. And as you said, like, as I said, from a swimming background, it can be lonely, although like you train a lot of people, there is that sort of camaraderie there whilst not being in a team sport, but being able to do those relays and celebrate with other people is just amazing.
Yeah. We don't get a lot of that in track and fields. So yeah, really, really special to share it.
Yeah, 100%. I like to do 3 questions to sort of finish with. And the first one is my favorite question ever to ask. And it is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
I think being resilient. I think, as an athlete, as a person, we all face challenges, and being able to kind of go through those and continue to show up, and continue to kind of put your heart on the line and be courageous, over and over and over again. I think that's something that sports taught me that I've been able to use in other parts of my life. And it's not necessarily easy, but it's definitely worthwhile. And so I think, that's something that I'm really proud of being able to kind of consider myself resilient.
Yeah, and absolutely something you should be proud of. I think there's many things that sport can teach us that we can apply to other areas in our life. The second question I have is, what is your favorite quote and or the best piece of advice that you've been given?
I think quote, as a track and field athlete, I'm a sucker for a Steve Prefontaine quote. So I would have to go with to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift, which I just think, is like that idea of, it's like you've been given this talent, and like if you're not going to show up 100% and give everything you've got, like, what are you even doing here? So I love that. And then I think just advice wise, I think one of those things, those like just real gold moments, talking to my psychologist early days, was this that idea of being nervous isn't a bad thing. It just means that you're about to do something you care about. And so the goal is not to get rid of the nerves. They're just there to let you know that this is important. And I think that was a really key like perspective shift for me. And I try to, when you're in the heat of something, sport or life-wise, and you feel, your tummy fluttering and your heart racing, just to, almost say like, this does matter. This is important. Got it. Like, take a deep breath, focus on what I've got to do to execute it in a way that is going to hopefully have the outcome that I want.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think that's something that, I personally can apply in my own sort of sporting life and, even career wise too. And I hope that anyone that's listening can put that into perspective as well. The last question I have is, any tips or advice for those that are listening?
I think probably, like I touched on before, I think that idea of, I think even athletes aside, like I think people in general, we're generally our worst, harshest critics. So I think, and we're all still living through a global pandemic, and I think it's easy to think that in Australia things are not so bad as other places, and especially for me living in Queensland, like sometimes you wouldn't even know. But I think we can always probably just be a little bit softer on ourselves and like just, hold ourselves a little bit more gently. Because I think we all know if we're at work and someone yells and screams at us, like they're not getting the best out of us. So I don't like, but we kind of do that to ourselves. So I think, most people respond better to like a caring approach. And we could probably all benefit from being a bit more caring towards ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all the insights on your career to date. It's been awesome chatting with you today.
Thanks for having me.